This video is part of the adult education series on reading in social studies. It covers labor and the economy in the context of assessing the adequacy of supporting data. Pay close attention, take notes, and be ready to answer some questions at the end.
In any discussion of labor and the economy, conclusions are often presented as if they are self-evident truths. A politician might say, raising the minimum wage will reduce poverty, or an economic analyst might argue, automation is eliminating jobs at an alarming rate. These statements sound convincing on the surface, but before we accept them, we must ask an important question. Is there enough evidence to support this conclusion? The process of assessing the adequacy of supporting data requires careful thought and a willingness to look beneath the surface of claims. The text you already know emphasizes that when you evaluate a conclusion, you must decide if the information provided truly relates to the statement it is meant to support. More importantly, you must determine if you have been given enough facts to reasonably accept the conclusion. This principle is especially important in economics, where data can be overwhelming, selective, or even misleading. Consider a common economic claim. Unemployment has dropped, so the economy is healthy. At first glance, lower unemployment might seem like clear evidence of improvement. However, to assess the adequacy of this claim, we must dig deeper. What kinds of jobs are being created? Are they full-time, stable jobs with benefits, or are they temporary and low-paying positions? Does the unemployment rate include discouraged workers who have stopped looking for work? Without answers to these questions, the conclusion may not be adequately supported. Thus, assessing adequacy involves three key steps: understanding the main idea and supporting details, asking whether the facts provided are enough to support the conclusion, identifying what other information might be needed to draw a logical, accurate conclusion. Only when we have gone through these steps can we confidently decide whether the data is sufficient and the conclusion is valid. To see how this works in practice, let's examine the issue of raising the minimum wage. Supporters often argue that higher wages will reduce poverty and give workers more spending power. To support this, they might point to statistics showing that millions of workers earn at or near the minimum wage, and that an increase would immediately raise their income. On the surface, this looks like adequate data. However, when evaluating adequacy, we must ask, are these facts enough to support the conclusion? The claim is that raising the minimum wage reduces poverty overall. The evidence shows that wages for some workers would increase, but it does not address other factors that could affect poverty. For example, how will employers respond? Will some reduce hours, cut jobs, or raise prices? Will certain groups of workers, such as teenagers or part-time employees, be more affected than others? Without this information, the conclusion is incomplete and perhaps misleading. On the other hand, opponents of minimum wage increases sometimes argue that such policies destroy jobs. To support their point, they may cite a study in which a small business cut staff after a wage hike. But is this one case enough to prove a broad claim about the entire economy? Probably not. Adequate data would require multiple studies, drawn from diverse industries and regions, that show consistent results. Otherwise, the conclusion rests on shaky ground. The same principle applies when analyzing automation and its impact on jobs. Many headlines declare that robots are taking over and that millions of workers will soon be unemployed. These conclusions are often supported by data showing increases in automation and artificial intelligence. Yet adequacy requires us to ask, does the data prove that jobs are disappearing overall, or only that certain tasks are changing? Some evidence suggests that while automation eliminates some jobs, it also creates new ones, often in technology, maintenance, or entirely new industries. Without considering both sides of the data, the conclusion that automation is destroying the workforce is not fully supported. This highlights a key lesson. Adequacy is not about finding data. It is about finding enough relevant, balanced data to support a conclusion. When important details are missing, when the evidence is one-sided, or when the supporting facts fail to match the claim, the conclusion should be questioned. The importance of assessing adequacy becomes even clearer when we look at how economic arguments shape public policy. Decisions about wages, taxes, job training, trade, and social programs all rely on data. If that data is incomplete or misleading, the policies created from it may not truly address the problems they claim to solve. For instance, during debates about unemployment benefits, one side may argue that extended benefits discourage people from working. To support this, they may cite data showing that some workers remain unemployed longer when benefits are available. But is that enough to conclude that benefits cause widespread laziness? Adequacy requires us to look deeper. Perhaps those workers remained unemployed because jobs were scarce, not because they lacked motivation. We would need broader data comparing job availability, regional economies, and personal circumstances before reaching a valid conclusion. Similarly, when evaluating claims about labor unions, one might hear unions hurt the economy because they increase costs for businesses. To support this, critics may cite examples of strikes or higher wages negotiated through collective bargaining. Yet Adequacy asks, is that the whole picture? Other data shows that unions can lead to greater worker satisfaction, lower turnover, and increased productivity. Without considering these factors, the conclusion that unions always harm the economy is not adequately supported. Ultimately, assessing adequacy is about developing intellectual discipline. It means refusing to accept claims at face value and instead asking probing questions. Do the facts directly support the conclusion? Are the facts complete, or is crucial information missing? Is the data representative of a larger trend, or is it based on limited examples? What other evidence would I need before accepting this conclusion? By applying these questions to issues of labor and the economy, readers and citizens can avoid being misled by incomplete or biased arguments. They can also strengthen their own reasoning by ensuring their conclusions rest on solid ground. Let's check for understanding. Carefully read the following questions, pause the video, determine the best answer for each, and then restart the video to check your answer.
What does assessing adequacy in economic arguments involve? A. It means accepting any claim that sounds reasonable. B. It means finding as much data as possible, regardless of relevance. C. It means focusing only on the main idea, not the details. D. It means determining if the evidence provided is sufficient and relevant to support a conclusion. The correct response is D. It means determining if the evidence provided is sufficient and relevant to support a conclusion. How can you determine if a conclusion in an economic argument is adequately supported? A. By checking if the conclusion matches popular opinion. B. By seeing if the argument uses complex vocabulary. C. By asking if the facts are enough to reasonably support the conclusion. D. By accepting the conclusion if any data is presented. The correct response is C. By asking if the facts are enough to reasonably support the conclusion. How can you identify when an economic argument lacks adequate support? A. By accepting claims from experts without question. B. By looking for missing details, one-sided evidence, and alignment between facts and claims. C. By using personal experience as the main source of evidence. D. By focusing only on the conclusion, not the supporting data. The correct response is B. By looking for missing details, one-sided evidence, and alignment between facts and claims. In short, an adequate conclusion requires adequate support. Just as a strong building needs a firm foundation, sound economic arguments need sufficient, relevant, and complete evidence. When the data is lacking, the argument collapses. But when the data is thorough and well connected to the claim, we can be confident that the conclusion is not only persuasive but also accurate. This has been a production of D&J Designs and Mathman 1962. If you like this video, click on the thumbs up. If you want to be notified when new videos are posted, click the bell. And if you want to see more videos like this one, click on the subscribe button.